Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another episode of Foxborough Central. I am your host, Bob Hickey, thanking you for taking a little bit of time to join me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations of Foxborough that make us special. And speaking of making us special, it is always a great opportunity to talk to the folks who want to volunteer for our town. And as part of the Election 2016 series, I wish to welcome Mark Sullivan to the table. How are you doing, Mark?
Bob, how are you?
Doing great. My old friend Mark. I served on the Board of Selectmen with you back in the day, but we are here tonight to talk about your current run. Interested in running for the position of school committee. It's a 3-year term, and it is an honor to have you join us tonight to talk a little bit about that. So, Mark, what is the motivation for running for the for the school committee?
Well, Bob, I want to thank Foxborough Cable Access and yourself for having me tonight. Even though you only asked me yesterday and gave me 1 day notice. My whole thing is in this election is to bring awareness to the opioid situation. Not just everywhere, but in Foxborough itself. Mm-hmm. And it's I figured I could use the podium on this show and the JC's candidate night to bring more awareness to the community, and also with the small excerpts I'll have in the paper. And that's my main focus. There's some small other reasons, but that's my focus. It's really been 11 years since Kate Kaminsky was on the school committee at the time. And Chief O'Leary and me went on Foxborough Cable Access at the old studio and talked about this situation. And it fell upon deaf ears then. And we cannot no longer allow it to fall on any more deaf ears because the situation is very serious.
So you're speaking of the opioid crisis. It's been well publicized. Boston Globe has recently run a number of columns and news stories on it. District Attorney has brought it to this studio, and the introduction of Narcan as a intervention tool for fire and police departments to try to save the lives of some of the folks who overdose on the opioids. But what we're really talking about is the Foxborough response, because this is a Foxborough election, obviously. Right. And we know there's some key leaders here in Foxborough that are working to educate and combat the crisis. You read about it on various Facebook pages and support groups. So how do you want to get that message out? What is the message precisely that you want to share?
Well, I think if the school committee would just focus more on not just the accreditation the schools have to focus on every year. I mean, you see kids coming out of school today, and I work with a lot of them, they can't even balance a checkbook, Bob. They don't even know what a checkbook is because everything's automated, everything's automatic. Well, it's right there. As soon as I take out my ATM card, it shows me my balance. And I said, well, where would you write a check? So there's a lot of things that I'd like to see improved, but I just think it's been ignored by the schools for a long time. I don't think they think it was in their schools. I know for a fact it is in the Foxborough High School. There's been a lot of kids that have come out of the high school and they're no longer with us.
You know, I agree with you completely in that for those of us here in Foxborough, as with any community, and we always like to think it doesn't happen in our community, but we're deluding ourselves if we think that isn't the case. And clearly it's a national issue. There's recently a directive that physicians cut back on their prescription of opioids, and a greater awareness, and I suppose from the top down, that's good. But what we're talking about is from the grassroots up, and the kids who are starting down that bad road need to be educated, and the prevention needs to be there. So how would you propose the schools, start getting that message across?
Well, there needs to be more education on it. I have kids in the school, and they're not being educated on it. I mean, they'll have a seminar once a year, especially with the athletes get together, and they'll have a speaker come in. But there's got to be other things in the electives. Especially with, drugs and alcohol. When you come into back up a little bit here, people have told me their stories. And I know a lot of kids that have been addicted on opium, and I call it mostly heroin, because that's what, nobody wakes up in the morning, and this is not my words, it's somebody else's words, and says, I'm going to be a heroin addict today. It starts off slowly. It starts off, well, we're going to try the perks. and then we're going to try this, and then we're going to try that, and then we're going to have other things. And then they get into the Oxycontins, and they're very expensive. And then all of a sudden, they can't afford that no more. And they run out of revenue. And the heroin's cheap and it's available. It's 5 minutes from where we're sitting right now. So I think a lot more education needs to be brought in. I think the school committee is going to be part of that. You know, and we're going to need some funding, obviously. And I think that's where it goes together with the Board of Selectmen. The board can appropriate money through town meeting, and you know, bring it to town meeting to try and appropriate money and put it towards the schools and education for this. I mean, there's a lot of avenues we can take, and we're going to put some committees together. I want to be part of those committees the board has already talked about, and work on it. But I don't expect, you know, when I call this out for people to be embarrassed about it. I'm not embarrassed about it. I got friends, and I got people close to me that have had problems, and some still have those problems. But there's a lot of success stories too. It's not all a bad ending, but it seems to be lately it's more and more spreading quickly. And if it's an epidemic, shouldn't we treat it like one?
Yeah, it's interesting. And when you said, when you mentioned, again, I'm with Mark Sullivan, who is a candidate for the Foxborough School Committee 2016 elections. And with what you said about the kids experimenting, working their way up, that's the same thing. We're of a certain age, and when we were growing up, it was alcohol is a lead-in to marijuana, marijuana is a lead-in to cocaine, and cocaine is a lead-in to all the other things that could have detrimental effects on us as kids and impressionable youth that we were. I suspect, I know I experimented my bit, not too much, but I did, and I think it's a normal rite of passage, which means it's something that we as adults know is going to happen. So shouldn't we also know that we need to intervene earlier and educate earlier and work harder, so that way our kids don't make the same mistakes that perhaps we did as youth growing up? And so what you're saying strikes home, because it's a generally accepted truth that people are going to experiment, and youngsters are going to test their boundaries, their limits, and explore. And so then we as adults need to work harder to make sure that the education is there.
Well, there's a big difference with heroin. It's going to grab you, and the opium, the pills, they grab you, and it's got such a physical dependency that they feel sick, and they can't get over the sickness. And when they're desperate to get that high again, when they come down, it really affects them badly. They don't think right, they don't sleep, and they get sick. So they're dependent on that drug. So I mean, other drugs that you're talking about, I saw my friends and everybody do and everything, and I was blessed because I had some good programs I was involved in, like the racing the motocross, and I was away a lot. So when I came back, I see some certain things. And I just had two friends of mine from Walpole that I played ball with and hung out with. I never no idea they went to heroin. They passed away last February. A year ago this February. I had no idea, but I've lost touch with them. You know, I haven't seen them, and I don't do Facebook. I'm not involved with all that. I'm not in the social media at all. So, but yeah, it's a lot stronger, I think, to break a heroin habit harder, I should say, than it is alcohol or marijuana or drugs of lower nature. But it's, especially when they're at that age, I mean, it's very difficult for them to kick it, and they have no place to go. I met a girl picking up lunch in Falmouth the other day in the pizza shop, and I didn't ask her name, but she said she was 26, and she had nowhere to go. And she started when she was in 8th grade, and she still wasn't clean. I could tell right off, because you know, after you're around them enough and you've associated with trying to help people like this, we call it the brown eye. I can see the person across the room and say, that person has an addiction problem. And people say, how can you see that? As well, when you're around it enough, you can see it. So what all the answers are, I don't know. But we can collectively come together, you know, especially on a board, to figure out what the best solution is going to be.
Okay, so we're talking with Mark Sullivan, who's a candidate for the school committee, and so some basic nuts and bolts. If we want to support you, we mentioned that we're not huge on Facebook, but how do we get in touch with you if we want to learn more about your candidacy for school committee?
You can call me at 508-212-3670 on my cell phone. And I have it in my pocket, except for right now, obviously.
Yes.
I don't want it to ring.
All right. Well, I'm always able to get a hold of you, so that's a great thing. I know that you're easily accessible and you're always around town also. So let's see. We'll continue with the nuts and bolts. You're in construction?
Yes.
And you've been a resident of our fair town for how many years?
20 years.
20 years. We're going to do the answering question. And you have 4 kids.
Yep.
All gone through the Foxborough school system?
Morgan went through private.
Right. And she's now in college, right?
Yeah, she's in Georgia.
I remember the days when she was on my daughter's soccer team together. We were co-coaches together, right, Coach?
2005.
So I suppose that's a lead-in to show that Mark has always been a supporter of our community. And in fact, you and I also served on the Foxborough Board of Selectmen together back in the 2000s. We'll call them the 2-aughts.
Yes.
And those were great times also. I thought we made some good connections, accomplishments, discussions, sometimes healthy disagreements, but always with the best interest of the town. So as the outcome. So from that experience, you now know what the platform is, and the opioid crisis is the message you want to get across. Is there anything else with the schools that you are interested in working with, running for?
I think home economics need to be put back in place. Like I mentioned, kids don't even know what, let's say, how to balance a checkbook. They don't know what interest rates are. They get a credit card and they don't understand what revolving credit is. They don't have any idea what stocks and bonds are. I could continue for an hour about what I think we're lacking in education. I think it's just important to learn how to survive as it is to learn how to, grow your brain and move on in the world and try and get your master's or whatever you want to do. But there's some basics I think need to be brought back to the table.
The basic building blocks,
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I suppose that a big topic these days is the standardized testing and then the Common Core type of education process. Have you had thoughts on that, or is the real focus of this campaign going to be on the opioid message?
Well, as a board, when you're on a board, it's a member bringing all the talent together. So some people have expertise on this, like you had your expertise, Bert Delaney, his expertise back in 2005, 6, and 7. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Thrasher, attorney, had his expertise. Mike Stanton.
Mentioning former members of the Board of Selectmen. You have that Snapchat memory, by the way, which people don't always know. I know this about you. You can remember dates like nobody's business. So.
Yeah, so everybody brings something to the table. If something I can offer for the community, that's fine. I'm never take it personal. I respect all the other candidates. I know all of them well, except for the new one, Chris Conley, who I just met. Seems like a great guy. Works in Brockton school system, 8th grade, history teacher. I think any of the candidates would be great. I just hope that, whatever they do is they pick up this message from me and an existing school committee, and let's move forward in this. Because it's we can't afford to lose any more children in this community or any other community. And it's to be treated like an epidemic, because that's what I think it is.
It's a very powerful message. Of course, we're here with Mark Sullivan, who is running for the school committee. I'm going to give you the last word because we're so close to being out of time, but I want to remind everybody to come out and vote. It's very important to do so. Make your voice heard. Mark, in addition to seeing this replay, of course, at www.fcatv.org, how can people get in touch with you to talk about the issues? Will you be up in the Common holding signs?
I will not.
Oh.
I am on the road every weekend with my sons.
You are
I
a
have
busy,
two sons.
busy man, and the motocross, right?
Yeah, I have Seamus and Johnny's starting to hang out with us, going away every weekend. And we travel New England for the next 35 straight weekends in Pennsylvania, New York, on the circuit. And, it's time you get to spend with your children.
Absolutely.
I'd love to be there, but I can't.
And I know that Joe's doing well also. And your lovely wife, how's she?
She's doing awesome. I mean, she's a strong woman,
Phenomenal.
When she saw me doing this, she was like, what's going on?
Did she give you permission, or did you just ask forgiveness?
She did. She said, if it's what you feel to get your message across, just get your message across. And that's what I'm out to do. And, like I said, but, the weekends are busy for me, but I'm around all the time on the weekdays.
Okay.
So at night and in the evening. So.
And what's that cell number one more time?
508-212-3670.
Thank you so much, Mark. And
thank
you very much for joining us here at Foxborough Cable Access and Foxborough Central. to meet with Mark Sullivan, candidate for Foxborough School Committee 2016. Don't forget to vote, and also don't forget to tune in back here on your favorite Foxborough Cable Access channel for more Foxborough Central. Take care, everybody.